Our last two sessions we discussed the dynamics of the yogic discipline called the integral yoga. To translate the philosophy of life divine into practice. We also noted that the main process is find a chair for her. The central process of this discipline consists in ascent and descent. Ascent of the human consciousness through the movements of aspiration, intense seeking, call, evocation, and a constant exertion, psychological and mental, emotional, to rise higher than the normal state of existence. And this movement of ascent calls forth a movement of descent. Descent of the higher consciousness. The higher consciousness responds in many ways. It may be experienced as an onset of peace or a moment of joy or a beginning of knowledge or a number of experiences, visual or auditory. One may begin to see various lights, symbols, or one may begin to hear sounds. Yogic experience lists as many as 10 types of sounds that one may hear when the higher movement starts. There is a graphic description of these 10 types of sounds in some of the Yoga Upanishads, or more conveniently in Sri Aurobindo's Epic Savitri. For instance, one may hear there is a sound of ocean. You may be on a hilltop, so there is no possibility of self-deception, but a constant rolling of waves. You hear that, like the bellows of a smith, or you may hear the sound of the cricket, that creature, insect that goes on making that monotonous drone, or you may hear like a caravan passing. Pilgrims in the olden days, they would go in a large number of carts, bullock carts or whatever, and that noise, or the noise of jingling bells, anklets or bells, or, which is more common, the sound of flute. It is the call of the infinite to the finite. And there are some more which I do not recollect at the moment. Or, as I said, you may begin to see things, hear things. You may not experience the descent in either of these experiences, but you may feel peace, you may feel light, joy, you may feel powerful, but some kind of impact one does feel. To ensure this response or the descent of the higher consciousness, an important step is to surrender. Surrender oneself. Surrender to the divine power. There is a power of yoga which works in everyone the moment one starts practicing it. It is especially so in the yoga of the Tantras, in the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, where there is a Yoga Shakti, the divine power in its aspect as the puissance, the energy that conducts the yoga movement. She is called the Divine Mother because she takes up the seeker, guards him, guards the seeker, and helps in opening the various parts of the being, reaching the higher impacts wherever they are needed. Mention of the word surrender creates always certain difficulties to the Western mind, because in the West the whole culture is organized around the sense of personal independence, individuality, and this individuality is wrongly identified with the surface complex of desire and ego, which masquerades as the self. So when we speak of surrender, there is a fear, an apprehension that one has to give up one's cherished freedom. In the East, this fear never occurs. because the whole tradition is always to entrust oneself to the divine, and one always knows or is taught to know that the individuality does not lie in the ignorant personality which is a slave to nature, but in something deeper which is above nature, which is linked to the divine reality. So, submission of the external person is done joyfully in order to recover one's true sense of individuality, true person. This distinction must be kept in mind by every Western seeker, that the seeker is not asked to forego anything that he has that the seeker has earned or developed, but to forego a posture of ignorance in order to get a foothold in the reality of things, reality of oneself. And the seeker is asked to surrender not to an external something, but to one's own higher self. All of us have a lower self and a higher self. That part of us which is always confused, driven by desire, passion, always involved in mechanical rounds of nature, that is the lower self. That part which is calm, which is above, which is peaceful, which is enlightened to begin with, that's the higher self. So it is the lower self that is asked to surrender itself to the higher self. Some of you at least must be familiar with the classic picture of two birds on a tree. There is a tree, and on the lower branch there is a bird eating the fruit of that tree and is unhappy. Now it is happy, now it is unhappy, depending upon what fruit it eats. Above, on the higher branch, there is another bird which is not eating any fruit, but is calmly watching the lower fellow. And when the bird on the lower branch gets tired and looks up casually, it sees that bird watching it, serene, happy, and the moment it looks at it, it is released from its grief, from its sorrow. This is a parable of the lower self involved in the movements of nature, and the higher self which is presiding from above. Each one of us has got to elevate oneself to that higher posture, higher poise, And this simile of the two birds on a common tree is repeated in many scriptures, many texts of the Indian tradition, and you must have seen some portrait pictures or embroidery efforts illustrating this parable. The point that I was making is, you do not have to surrender to an external agent, but recognize that you have limited capacity, that the most that you can do is but little, and which one opens oneself, surrenders oneself, is called the Divine Mother. The Divine Mother is not just an anthropomorphic conception. The Mother is a term applied to a power of the reality, because it mothers, it brings out, it sustains. To recapitulate some of the points that we have already discussed and which are relevant to our discussion today, the supreme reality, the absolute, is called the Brahman, Supreme Brahman, Para-Brahman, who is ineffable, cannot be understood by the mind, but it is also the omnipresent reality which reveals itself to our uplooking intelligence in three forms. So Brahman, the reality, first reveals itself as the Atman, the self of everything. It also reveals itself, takes another poise, where it is the spirit, the conscious being in every form. The Atman, the self, is behind. The spirit or the conscious being, the Purusha, conducting things, presiding over the life moment, taking active interest moment to moment. He is the Purusha, the conscious being or the spirit. Presiding over the entire universe, this reality reveals itself also as the overruler, as the Lord, as the divine being, God. He is Ishvara. Corresponding to these three self becomings of Brahman, there are three poises of the power of Brahman. The power of Brahman is not something different from Brahman. It is Brahman as power. The sunlight is not different from the sun. It is the sun as light. And when Brahman is in the poise of Atman, the self, That power is called Maya, conceptually creative. It conceives, meant what you in our language, in consciousness, and in the very act of conceiving, it creates. When it forms an idea, immediately it is created. So Maya is the power that is conceptually creative. It is not, as later philosophers or Vedantins would say, a power of falsehood, a power of cunning. No, it is a power that finitizes the infinite. What is formless, it delivers in forms. What is immeasurable, it measures out. As related to the conscious being or the Purusha, it is called the Prakriti. Prakriti, which is dynamically executive. What is conceived on one plane, it is dynamically executed on another plane. There it is called Prakriti. Where there is Prakriti, there is Purusha. Where there is Purusha, there is inevitably the Prakriti. In the cosmic context, there is the Ishvara, the Lord, the sovereign overruler. His power is called Shakti, which is both conceptually creative and dynamically executive. You would ask, why do you speak of Shakti, of power at all? Is not Brahman, the reality, sufficient by itself? Is not the one the final term? Yes. One when it is in itself. But when it chooses to manifest, it moves into the mood of manifestation. It poises itself into two. There is a polarity. There is a biune existence in the place of one. No creation, no manifestation is possible without two. Whether the two are two independent entities or the one placing itself as two, positing itself as two, there have to be two. And that is the power, that is the Shakti. In India, certain systems emphasize the supremacy of the Purusha, the Lord, and give a subordinate status to the Shakti. There are schools of the Tantra which exalt the Shakti above the Purusha. The classic image of Shakti having a higher position than the Purusha is where Kali, the dynamic power, is shown as dancing on the breast of Shiva. Shiva is there lying in peace, tranquility, and on his chest the dance goes on. The symbology is evident that the divine, as the Lord, as the overseer, takes a static position, supporting the dynamic and the active movement of his power. In Sri Aurobindo's integral philosophy, however, there is no question of subordinate and superior, for the simple reason that both the Lord and the Shakti are the same reality, taking two poises. In a classic passage, Sri Aurobindo describes how world existence is the ecstatic dance of Shiva. Endlessly multiplying the body of the God to the view, but always leaving the white existence, precisely what it was and what it is, and where it will ever be. The sole object is the joy of dancing. Joy, delight is the purpose of creation, and the whole is looked upon as a play, as a meaningful play with these two actors, Shiva and Shakti, the Lord and his spouse, the mother. And this conception of the Shakti, the Divine Mother, is a cornerstone in Sri Aurobindo's integral philosophy of life. He was a greatly self-respecting, self-reliant man. But at a certain stage in his life, he realized that human effort needs to be seconded by the divine hand. Whether you call it grace or power, it is the same. Grace is a response, movement of the divine Shakti. And this Shakti has both an individual and a cosmic context. There can be nothing without the action of the Shakti or the power or the Divine Mother. In a classic book, which is so small as this one, The Mother, which is considered to be one of the most and an unparalleled English prose work, he delineates the functions performed by the Divine Shakti, the Divine Mother, who takes particular forms for particular activities. There is one power, no doubt, but it assumes different forms to work out different results. And they are four major powers of the Divine Mother at work in the universe. He says, the four powers of the Mother are four of her outstanding personalities, portions and embodiments of her divinity, through whom she acts on her creatures, orders and harmonizes her creations in the worlds, and directs the working out of her thousand forces. For the Mother is one, but she comes before us with differing aspects. Many are her powers and personalities, many her emanations and vibhutis, I am coming, that do her work in the universe. In order to understand the basic standpoint of Indian philosophy and spirituality, there are certain conceptions of which you must have a clear idea. Each one of us has a portion of the divine reality. It is a speck, it is a spark. That spark develops from life to life, and when it becomes an entity, we call it the soul. It becomes a person. To that extent, each one of us is potentially divine. Instead of being dubbed as sinful, we are potentially divine. Well, in order to help this evolving humanity at critical junctures of transition from level to level of consciousness, at each juncture where nature alone is not able to take the leap, the divine reality, the divine Lord takes human form or takes an appropriate form, embodies the divine power and helps nature, humanity to go to the next level of consciousness. And this assumption by the divine of a human form, to establish on earth a new principle of consciousness, of existence, introduce a new grade of being. This phenomenon is called incarnation. Incarnation is avatar. Avatara is to descend. So he descends, the divine descends and takes a human form. In principle, you will see that the descent is there in each one of us, but we are not conscious. An avatar, an incarnation, is always conscious. From the beginning, the person is conscious that he carries a divine consciousness, and it has come for establishing a particular truth. And these avatars take place once in a millennium, not even 1 millennium, many millenniums. In between, there are partial manifestations of the divine as concentrations of power, aspects of power in the field of knowledge, in the field of art, in the field of military science, in the field of physical science. Wherever you see an outstanding concentration of brilliance, something extraordinary, you can be sure that there is a concentration of a particular divine energy in that person. He may or may not be conscious. He may think he has done wonderful work, he is great and he is a genius and all that. But the thing that affects results is the divine power, and that is called Vibhuti. V-I-B-H-U-T-I. These Vibhutis are in a sense emanations. An emanation is the divine doesn't come, but a part of the divine, a ray of the divine comes out and does work, attaching itself to a human form or taking a human form. That is called an emanation. Now, if I have the occult power of concentrating my consciousness and leaving it with you as your friend, as to direct, to guide you, that is an emanation. An emanation is a formation deliberately put out for a particular purpose. So these are different grades of manifestation: an avatar, a vibhuti, an emanation. An emanation, once it does its work, it withdraws. Thus, for instance, I may feel inspired during a certain period of my life to do something extraordinary. Once that work is done, I fall flat and I become my ordinary self. That is, an emanation has worked. Now this is very important to understand the Eastern tradition. I remember when the project Aurobindo, the planetary city project, was started by the mother in the Pondicherry, 7 miles from our ashram. A team of architects, I think about 20 or 15 of them, came from Europe. They were interested in this project of a universal city where anybody can have freedom to develop, to express oneself, whether the person has money or no money, whatever community or class or country he belongs to, where a place where participation in arts, music and things of that type were open, participations were open to those who had the affinity to them and were not governed by the wealth, where new types of education were being experimented to give freedom for the inner soul to develop and so on, where money was not legal tender. So a number of architects came to see how they can participate, how they can contribute in building the city. Now they were all put up in a number of our guest houses meant for Western visitors, and naturally in many of these places there were enlarged photographs of Mother, of Sri Aurobindo, and there was among the architects one Polish architect. You know, Poland is now communist by compulsion, but this man has grown after the Second World War, so he has grown up a communist. So he was bewildered. He didn't understand what is this. People putting all these photographs and worshipping them, adoring them. So he did not know. So he wrote a letter, one line letter to the mother. Mother, are you God? And he sent the letter. The mother answered him immediately with another sentence. She said, yes, I am. And you too are. The purpose of life is to realize that truth. So, each one is potentially divine. An incarnation, an avatar is consciously divine. So these three categories, emanations, vibhutis and avatars. Now, I spoke of the four powers of the mother. Yes, four great aspects of the mother, four of her leading powers and personalities have stood in front in her guidance of this universe and in her dealings with the terrestrial play. One is her personality of calm wideness and comprehending wisdom and tranquil benignity and inexhaustible compassion and sovereign and surpassing majesty and all-ruling greatness. And this power is called Maheshwari, the great empress, the great sovereign. And what does she do? Imperial Maheshwari is seated in the wideness above the thinking mind and will, and sublimates and greatens them into wisdom and largeness, or floods with the splendor beyond them. For she is the mighty and wise one, who opens us to the supramental infinities and the cosmic vastness, to the grandeur of the supreme light, to a treasure house of miraculous knowledge, to the measureless movement of the Mother's eternal forces. Tranquil is she and wonderful, great and calm forever. Nothing can move her, because all wisdom is in her. Nothing is hidden from her that she chooses to know. She comprehends all things and all beings and their nature and what moves them and the law of the world and its times and how all was and is and must be. A strength is in her that meets everything and masters, and none can prevail in the end against her vast, intangible wisdom and high tranquil power. Equal, patient and unalterable in her will, she deals with men according to their nature, and with things and happenings according to their force and the truth that is in them. Partiality she has none, but she follows the decrees of the Supreme, and some she raises up, and some she casts down or puts away from her into the darkness. To the wise she gives a greater and more luminous wisdom. Those that have vision she admits to her counsels. On the hostile she imposes the consequence of their hostility. The ignorant and foolish she leads according to their blindness. In each man she answers and handles the different elements of his nature according to their need and their urge and the return they call for, puts on them the required pressure, or leaves them to their cherished liberty to prosper in the ways of ignorance or to perish. For she is above all, bound by nothing, attached to nothing in the universe. Yet has she, more than any other, the heart of the universal mother. For her compassion is endless and inexhaustible. All are to her eyes her children and portions of the One. Even the Asura and the Rakshasa and the Pishacha, I am coming to that, and those that are revolted and hostile. Even her rejections are only a postponement. Even her punishments are a grace. But her compassion does not blind her wisdom or turn her action from the course decreed. For the truth of things is her one concern, knowledge her center of power, and to build our soul and our nature into the divine truth, her mission and her labor. This refers to the premier personality, the mother of knowledge and light. Now there is these three words, the Asura, the Rakshasa and the Pishacha. You know what they call demons, hostile beings. At the physical plane, a disembodied spirit which works contrary to the divine law, creates confusion, is called Pishacha, the demon. At the vital plane, the life plane, it is an ambitious being, wanting to conquer, wanting to aggrandize, is called the Rakshasa. On the mental plane, the titans, those who set themselves against the gods, those who want to rule, they are capable of lot of austerity, self-denial. They are called the Asuras. I think we can break for a while. Additional clarifications that would supplement what we have talked earlier today. I spoke of avatars, incarnations of the divine being to help difficult phases of transition in evolution. In India, we have a parable. It is not to be taken too literally, with arithmetical precision, but it gives you a key to understanding the whole phenomenon. They say, in the beginning it was all waters, whether in the Jewish tradition or Christian or Hindu, they say it is all waters. Symbolic. Waters represent consciousness. Moving waters are moving consciousness. Well, when all was water, the divine appears in the form of a being living in water, that is fish. It is called the fish avatar, the fish incarnation. That is, the divine establishes the water species by taking that form and stabilizing that species which lives in water. Long afterwards, when things are ready, it takes the form, the divine being appears as what is called both a water and a land being, tortoise. What is it called? Amphibian. Yes, Churchill used that word, for their tanks and all that. Amphibian. Tortoise. It can live in water, but it can also live on land. So a transition was made from water to land. The third incarnation is the divine being appearing as a land animal, purely a developed land animal, which is called the boar, B-O-A-R. After that has been stabilized well enough, it appears as half animal and half human. It is called Narasimha, that is, it is a creature, half human and half animal. It affects a transition between the animal and the human. Next, it appears as dwarf, a dwarf man. It is called Vamana. So small, but there is a symbolic story that the divine being appears as such a dwarf fellow, and the earth is being ruled by a titan, and the whole three worlds he is ruling and putting into jail all the gods. So the gods are afraid. Then they appeal to the Supreme Godhead to save them. So he appears as Vamana, the dwarf. So he appears before the king in the assembly. And the king asks, he is a Brahmin, a priest, who always has a right to ask for alms. And the kings have got to give whatever these people ask for. So the king asks, what do you want? He says, I want to place my steps 3 times. That means you give me land for 3 steps full of land you give me in your kingdom. Then he said, very well. Then he said, choose, take it. So what he does, with 1 step, he gets big and big and occupies the whole earth. The 2nd step, he occupies the higher terrestrial regions. And then he says, where shall I put my 3rd step? The earth is occupied, above earth is occupied. Where? Then the king is confused, the titan. He says, put it on my head. So that dwarf places the foot on the head of the titan and presses him downward below the earth and recovers the whole kingdom for gods. Now the point is that dwarf man has the potentiality of expanding and occupying the whole universe, becoming the master of the universe. That's the idea. And next is the full developed man, but a rajasic, dynamic man, who is hero, full of vitality, full of power, spreading everywhere. That's the next, the heroic man. Thereafter comes Rama, the sattvic man, the hero who establishes the kingdom of law, who summons the aid of the monkeys, restless energies of the mind, and puts down the Titan king, establishes the rule of law. Thereafter comes Krishna, the god of delight. After balance, delight. Thereafter comes Buddha, who establishes the truth of impersonal reality. God is not only in form, but even without form. There is Jesus, who comes with love, divine love, to establish on earth. And the final avatar is expected. Symbolically, it is described as coming on a white horse to terminate the age of iron and establish the age of truth. White horse symbolizes purified energy, purified power. Now this is called the parable of 10 avatars, which is very famous in India, and which I give you for what it is worth. As I said, these things are not to be taken too literally in the form in which they are presented, but you must see the symbol behind. Next is We speak of consciousness and we speak of energy or power. What is to be noted is consciousness. What is consciousness? Consciousness is awareness. Awareness of oneself and awareness of all. So self-awareness and all awareness is consciousness. Each form has this consciousness in varying degree. We are conscious only of a fragment of ourselves. We are conscious only of what our physical senses touch. There is much more. The meaning of evolution is to make this consciousness as wide, as large and as deep as possible. Now this consciousness is not just static awareness. It is dynamic. It has a power. Wherever there is consciousness, there is power, there is force. Wherever there is force, there is a consciousness guiding it. And of this force, energy is a particular movement. Energy need not be only physical energy. There can be mental energy, there can be emotional energy, there can be psychic energy, there can be spiritual energy. Energy is a concretized movement of force. So you will kindly keep in mind that where there is consciousness, there is force. Whether the force is expressed in movement or held in stasis, it is another matter. And where there is force, where there is power, where there is energy, there is behind it, presiding over it, guiding it, this consciousness. In Indian terminology, Chit is consciousness, C-H-I-T, and Shakti is power, force. So consciousness, force. We were reading a description of the first power in which the Divine Mother functions, and you would have seen the power in the writing of Sri Aurobindo, which we read. There is a certain potency and dynamism in his writing, because he is writing these words are concretized expressions of his experience. You must have heard the story of Muhammad. You know, as he was the prophet, so one day a mother came to him and said to the prophet, "You see, my son is falling on bad ways. What is he doing? The Prophet asked. He said he is eating too many dates. Day after hour he is eating dates. And he doesn't listen to anybody. But if you tell him, don't eat dates, he will listen to you. May I bring him? The Prophet told her, bring the boy after 1 month. Dutifully, she went back and brought the kid after 1 month. And the Prophet looked at him and told him, my boy, don't eat dates. And the boy never ate afterwards. So after that, the lady came again to the Prophet. She said, I am very curious. When I told you, you said bring him again after a month, and you just told him, don't eat, and he is not eating. Why? You could have done that in the first time when I came to you. Why did you need to ask me to bring him after a month? Then he said, my dear lady, at that time I myself was eating dates. And if I had told, it would have had no effect at that time. I stopped after that. And then I told him, don't eat. This is to illustrate that a word born of experience alone has power. Otherwise, it is a mental formulation. It may be beautiful, it may be charming, but it has no effect. It won't change anything. It has no impact. And Sri Aurobindo achieved, as I described here, on the first day, complete mental silence when he was about 36 or 37. Thereafter, his mind never worked. He wrote only in the fullness of experience the words came. So that is the idea of the Vedic hymns, the masters, the rishis. Every hymn of theirs is a pulsation of an inner experience. And such a prayer or hymn which is born out of experience, for the person who utters it is a means of stabilizing that experience in himself. And for somebody who hears or reads, it is a key. It acts as a key to open that person to that experience. Mother used to describe how every page of Sri Aurobindo's writings, Life Divine for instance, it was charged. Every word for an occult sight was dazzling with diamond light, because each word is a concentration of his consciousness and power of experience. That is why his words create a certain effect. They vibrate with a certain spiritual power. And it is in this connection that Mother used to say, before you can usefully speak for 1 minute, you have to be silent, concentrated for 1 full day. That was her way of putting things. That it is only in the fullness of experience that you should speak. Otherwise, they are empty words. Now, are there any other questions before I proceed with the other descriptions? Yes.
About the avatar.
Yes.
You defined the avatar
Yes.
as the
Yes.
God consciousness
Yes.
incarnated.
Yes.
Would you say that a human being
Yes.
that has attained
Yes.
God consciousness
Yes.
can call himself an avatar? Like you see, for instance, in India, you have now Sai Baba, such as Sai Baba.
No, you see, they are everybody is an avatar in the sense that potentially one is divine. But an avatar is one who descends in human form fully conscious. Now in India it is a tradition that every guru is regarded as an avatar by his disciples. You know, that's the way things go on. But they are not accepted by others. To Sai Baba's disciples, he is true.
And he claims to be.
Yes, yes, he claims to be. You know, these are certain foibles, you know, of the external personality of these saints. He is really a remarkable person, a very powerful man with the greatest mass following in India. He is a man of great love. Anybody who goes to him, his life changes. And if there are so many people coming to him, you know, on his birthday, for instance, 200, 300, 400,000 people. So he has to go on a helicopter and bless everybody. Otherwise, how can they see him? And, you know, he has secretaries, people, so many people want to see him. So he would ask the secretaries, you know, to meet the people and those who really need him to arrange interviews. That was how it started. Now, as it develops in all institutions, the secretaries, they develop their own notions. So they would, you know, get interviews for rich people or influential people, for politicians who can help them and that kind of thing. So the poorer people, the people who are humble, they could never get to him. So they complained and the word reached him. So thereafter he said, no more secretaries to screen. So in the mornings at 8 o'clock, he said they are all assembled in the garden, all the people who have come, maybe 1,000, 2,000 people. So he just passes through them. There are two lines, you know. In India that is still there, men on one side, women on the other side. So he passes through, and when he passes there is a vibration, people feel blessed, and then he would say, there, there, there. So 7, 8 people he will point out. And it turns out that they are the people who most needed to see him. And he meets them. A man of great love. But you know, the Western disciples, most of them who have gone and have written books and all that, they are fascinated by his miracles. He materializes. As he will just do like this and get a watch and give you. He will get a pen. If somebody is appearing for an examination, he will give a fountain pen. Or somebody going to marry, they come for blessings, he will give you 2 rings. As if from nowhere. Now that fascinates the Western mind more than his spiritual consciousness or spiritual power, his love. They are fascinated by that. They say they do research. What research can they do there? You see, they wonder whether it is magic. You know, leisure the man, you know, taking out things. It is not. He has that occult power of materializing things. But that occult power has nothing to do with spirituality. Nothing to do. It is an art, it is a gift, God-given gift. It is true. He calls himself an avatar and people regard him as an avatar. But you know, we all have an indulgent smile at these things. But he is a great man. And avatars don't come like that.
How can you differentiate the real avatar
Yeah.
from the not real avatar. I mean, both
You see, they
tell you that they are avatars.
they rarely boast.
Right.
They won't say that. A rich man is not going to, jingle his coins and say, I am a rich man. You see.
Because Christ, he said he was Christ.
He was the way. He was the way. He didn't claim to be God. He says, I am the Son of God, Son of Man.
Sometimes he said,
I am the way. You see, I am the way. And he says, and you must know that the first Gospels appeared 80 years after he passed away. 80 years after that. And that Aramaic language, such old, difficult language, what exactly he said and what was the teaching we really do not know. Just as Buddha also. What was real Buddha's teaching we do not know. We know Buddhism. So we know Christianity, Christian theology. But what was real teaching of Christ? We can only speculate. Do you understand? In that afflatus, one may say, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am that universal person who has appeared from age to age, he says. But in that afflatus you can understand. But not in talking to everybody, sundry, and I am God, we don't say that. But there are some people who say I am God. Now you have to take it that way. I think one of these people who says that he is God has come to Seattle area, Oregon I think, and has established himself. Anything else?
I wanted to ask you, found myself
You see, by the way, an avatar creates an age. He initiates a new forward movement for the whole of humanity. You understand? And that work continues for thousands of years. An avatar is rarely known during his lifetime. At that time he is just another individual, a big man, a great man, a powerful man, that's all. But from the legacy, from what has been achieved long afterwards, people regard. For contemporaries of Jesus, he was the son of who is that carpenter? Joseph of Nazareth. They never thought him to be incarnation, isn't it? So no avatar has been regarded in his lifetime. Yes, somebody wanted to ask.
Do you think that Sri Aurobindo will be considered an
That we don't know. We are too near these events. You see, we are too near, and it is left for history or posterity. We do not know. But what I regard it is my personal experience, based on my experience, whatever it is. I can't impose it on others. It has to come by experience or whatever. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that whole concept of Adam and Eve,
Yeah.
and did that fit anywhere in with the concept of divine consciousness? Because it seems as though that's man's explanation for darkness. If Eve didn't eat the forbidden fruit, then we wouldn't have sin, we wouldn't have darkness. And I found myself thinking about how, was that just
There are
man's
many.
own ignorance that even created that?
There are many explanations for this symbolic legend. The meaning that is commonly attached to this story is not correct. It is popular. But the fall is the fall from the sense of unity with God. Division came. Division from oneness, and that is the fall. why does that division come? By ego. Ego is the fruit of the tree of life. And one who eats that, means assimilates that, he feels he is different from everybody else, from God, from the universe, from everybody. And that is the state of ignorance, that is the sin. The original sin is ignorance. Ignorance of one's true nature. And that is because of ego. And this ego starts with the human level. Below us, the animals do not have this ego of separation. With the human mind coming into its own, the ego forms, the ego of separativity. And this phenomenon has been pictured in different types of legends in different mythologies. And this eating of the tree, it has been differently interpreted by different people. Recently there was a book written by a Jewish writer on the inner meaning of Bible. Wonderful it is. Testament. How even the Moses leading the tribes out of Egypt gives a whole spiritual explanation. It was given an external meaning, external form, so that it should sink into the minds of people, that's all. It is a small book. I had to review it somewhere. I don't get the name now. It was published in America or England, I don't remember. So these have many explanations, but not the popular meanings. Now, we read about Maheshwari, the imperial director of knowledge, the power that builds knowledge and rules over this universe. There is another power, another form of the divine Shakti, and that is Mahakali is of another nature. Not wideness but height, not wisdom but force and strength are her peculiar power. There is in her an overwhelming intensity, a mighty passion of force to achieve, a divine violence rushing to shatter every limit and obstacle. All her divinity leaps out in a splendor of tempestuous action. She is there for swiftness, for the immediately effective process, the rapid and direct stroke, the frontal assault that carries everything before it. Terrible is her face to the Asura, dangerous and ruthless her mood against the haters of the divine. For she is the warrior of the worlds, who never shrinks from the battle. Intolerant of imperfection, she deals roughly with all in man that is unwilling, and she is severe to all that is obstinately ignorant and obscure. Her wrath is immediate and dire against treachery and falsehood and malignity. Ill will is smitten at once by her scourge. Indifference, negligence, and sloth in the divine work she cannot bear, and she smites awake at once with sharp pain, if need be, the untimely slumberer and the loiterer, the impulses that are swift and straight and frank, the movements that are unreserved and absolute, the aspiration that mounts in flame, are the motion of Mahakali. Her spirit is tameless. Her vision and will are high and far-reaching, like the flight of an eagle. Her feet are rapid on the upward way, and her hands are outstretched to strike and to succor. For she too is the mother, and her love is as intense as her wrath, and she has a deep and passionate kindness. When she is allowed to intervene in her strength, then in one moment are broken, like things without consistence, the obstacles that immobilize, or the enemies that assail the seeker. If her anger is dreadful to the hostile, and the vehemence of her pressure painful to the weak and timid, she is loved and worshipped by the great, the strong and the noble, for they feel that her blows beat what is rebellious in their material into strength and perfect truth, hammer straight what is wry and perverse, and expel what is impure or defective. But for her, what is done in a day might have taken centuries. Without her ananda, bliss, without her, ananda might be wide and grave, or soft and sweet and beautiful, but would lose the flaming joy of its most absolute intensities. To knowledge she gives a conquering might, brings to beauty and harmony a high and mounting movement, and imparts to the slow and difficult labor after perfection an impetus that multiplies the power and shortens the long way. Nothing can satisfy her that falls short of the supreme ecstasies, the highest heights, the noblest aims, the largest vistas. Therefore, with her is the victorious force of the divine, and it is by grace of her fire and passion and speed, if the great achievement can be done now rather than hereafter. She is the mother of might, who breaks down the obstacles and resistances in the individual seeker and also in the world at large. Whatever resists the birth of light and consciousness. She has a very important part to play in beating the rebellious material in us into strength and perfection. There is the third manifestation, and that is, the first was wisdom, the second was power. He says, wisdom and force are not the only manifestations of the Supreme Mother. There is a subtler mystery of her nature, and without it, wisdom and force would be incomplete things, and without it, perfection would not be perfect. Above them is the miracle of eternal beauty, the unseizable secret of divine harmonies, the compelling magic of an irresistible universal charm and attraction that draws and holds things and forces and brings together and obliges them to meet and unite, that a hidden Ananda may play from behind the veil and make of them its rhythms and its figures. This is the power of Mahalakshmi, Mahalakshmi. And there is no aspect of the divine Shakti more attractive to the heart of the embodied beings. Maheshwari can appear too calm and great and distant for the littleness of earthly nature to approach or contain her. Mahakali too swift and formidable for us, for its weakness to bear. But all turn with joy and longing to Mahalakshmi, for she throws the spell of the intoxicating sweetness of the divine. To be close to her is a profound happiness, and to feel her within the heart is to make existence a rapture and a marvel. Grace and charm and tenderness flow out from her like light from the sun, and wherever she fixes her wonderful gaze or lets fall the loveliness of her smile, the soul is seized and made captive and plunged into the depths of an unfathomable bliss. Magnetic is the touch of her hands, and their occult and delicate influence refines mind and life and body, and where she presses her feet course miraculous streams of an entrancing Ananda. And yet it is not easy to meet the demand of this enchanting power or to keep her presence. Harmony and beauty of the mind and soul, harmony and beauty of the thoughts and feelings, harmony and beauty in every outward act and movement, harmony and beauty of the life and surroundings. This is the demand of Mahalakshmi. Where there is affinity to the rhythms of the secret world bliss and response to the call of the all beautiful and concord and unity and the glad flow of many lives turn towards the divine, in that atmosphere she consents to abide. But all that is ugly and mean and base, all that is poor and sordid and squalid, all that is brutal and coarse, repels her advent. Where love and beauty are not, or are reluctant to be born, she does not come. Where they are mixed and disfigured with baser things, she turns soon to depart, or cares little to pour her riches. If she finds herself in men's hearts surrounded with selfishness and hatred and jealousy and malignance and envy and strife, if treachery and greed and ingratitude are mixed in the sacred chalice, if grossness of passion and unrefined desire degrade devotion, in such hearts the gracious and beautiful goddess will not linger. A divine disgust seizes upon her and she withdraws, for she is not one who insists or strives. Or veiling her face, she waits in her for this bitter and poisonous devil stuff to be rejected and disappear before she will found anew her happy influence. Ascetic bareness and harshness are not pleasing to her, nor the suppression of the heart's deeper emotions and the rigid repression of the soul's and life's parts of beauty. For it is through love and beauty that she lays on men the yoke of the divine. Life is turned in her supreme creations into a rich work of celestial art, and all existence into a poem of sacred delight. The world's riches are brought together and concerted for a supreme order, and even the simplest and commonest things are made wonderful by her intuition of unity and the breath of her spirit. Admitted to the heart, she lifts wisdom to pinnacles of wonder and reveals to it the mystic secrets of the ecstasy that surpasses all knowledge, meets devotion with the passionate attraction of the divine, teaches to strength and force the rhythm that keeps the might of their acts harmonious and in measure, and casts on perfection the charm that makes it endure forever. This is the third, the mother of beauty, the mother of harmony and delight. And last, there is the fourth, which we will do tomorrow.